Dan Lapel for New Focus Recordings, and I'm very happy to be joined by Movses Pogossian. Movses is a wonderful violinist who's put out four records with us now. The fourth coming out this Friday, Hommàge à Kurtág. Hey Movses, how's it going?
Hi Dan, good to see you.
Thanks for joining. So I know your work with Kurtág goes back many years, and you had a chance to work closely with him, specifically coaching the Kafka fragments with Tony Arnold, right?
That's right. Yeah. And so I'll be happy to tell a little bit about that very fortuitous occasion in my life
Yeah.
and in Tony Arnold's life. It was 2004, and we just were learning Kafka fragments in Buffalo, where both of us were teaching, University at Buffalo. And then on a whim, we thought, okay, let's just call Kurtag and ask if there's any chance we can work with him. And 3 months later, I got a message on my answering machine from Kurtag. And next thing we know, a few months later, we're in Budapest, and we spent 1 week with Tony working with him on Kafka fragments. And without exaggeration, it was a life-changing experience for us. Of course, working with a great composer on his music is already a holy grail of sorts, obviously for us interpreters, learning from a horse's mouth, so to speak. But equally special was learning about Beethoven by watching him coach the Eben Quartet, every afternoon, late Beethoven. And then learning what really being a human means, and seeing him in his interactions with Marta Kurtag, and being just forever falling under the spell of this very special person. So I could say probably it really changed the way I think about music, and I think about life, ever since that week in Budapest. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not to pry too much, but I'm curious if you could be more specific in a way. Uh, so, because what I've heard about his coaching and what I feel about his music, to me, seem to suggest there's some symbiosis there. But having never met him or worked with him, I'm not sure. But the sort of care with which he invests in every single gesture and the sense that there's no other note that could be the note that's chosen, and it's just it's such precise and deeply felt music. So I wonder if that's the same quality that comes up in the
It it,
coaching. Yeah.
it is. You basically you feel all the time under radar, and in presence of a laser guided some sort of being, and I would say intellect, but there's also laser guided heart there. So it's those two working all the time on an overdrive, and it's exhausting, but it also brings out so much, and even the way he would show a note, he plays a note on the piano and you literally feel like it's a laser. But it is that attention to every note, and how that note is born and why that note is born and how it should come out, and really going into that kitchen, into that engine room, of the entire process, both musically but also in a detail such as how do you stand, and throwing in Alexander technique, but then throwing in a harmony, and then us being an actor, he made Tony bark, for God's sake, so that she could deliver those special notes that he wanted in particular way.
Yeah.
um, uh, yeah, just every note, uh, and made me remember actually Louis Krasner in my old teacher, because I sat once in the who premiered Berg and Schoenberg violin concertos, but so Webern was his idol, and so is Kurtag's idol. And Krasner would say, every note has its own life. And this is pretty much what Kurtag's philosophy is and
Yeah.
was. And that's what I learned, from him most.
Yeah. An amazing expressive commitment, I guess. It's
Exactly. And there are a lot of tales about, not tales, true stories. I have some great musician friends who coached with him and ended up being ruined for months, as a result of those coachings, because it's very kind of a hands-on domineering style, and I can imagine how you don't want that to happen a day before your performance,
Yeah.
for example, somewhere. But we were incredibly fortunate with Tony that it came at such a right time for us as interpreters, and he sowed so many seeds there, and we still, uh, collecting the results.
Yeah.
Now, 18 years later, like we performed with Tony this piece just a few months ago, and we keep remembering what we learned, and the piece continues evolving.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah. I sort of sometimes think that there's I don't know since I haven't worked with him, but listening to you talk about it, there's a certain kind of old school way of coaching that is very direct, right? And that some people might end up sort of feeling like a little bruised or take personally. But there's another way to look at it sometimes if you're in the right frame of mind, at least for me, if I'm in the right frame of mind. It's sort of liberating. It's really not about me or about that person. It's just about the music and some ideal that you can sort of lift out away from yourself and be inspired by.
The one, perhaps one of the most learning experiences was that we worked with him on the same piece 3 years later in Darmstadt, because we were performing at Darmstadt. And in the same movements, about the same sections, he would say directly opposite things
Oh wow.
between those two. So that already was liberating,
Yeah, yeah.
and for us, and telling, but with the equal amount of conviction. So
Yeah,
as if was saying, it's possible this way too,
sure, of course.
but really you have to nail it.
Right. Yeah, it's a fluid, dynamic thing, but the thing it needs absolute commitment no matter what direction you take it in. Yeah.
Right. So, going to these pieces that I recorded, the science games and
Yeah, yeah.
messages, is really a very natural extension of that work on Kafka fragments. And what I discovered, to my amazement, because I've played some of them before, but some I've never touched until preparing this recording. About 8 of them were completely new for me. And then I checked the year and date when they were written, and some of them are literally months, maybe a year before the Kafka fragments. And almost exactly same gestures or similar, as if he was using these as some sort of laboratory,
Hmm.
you know to create those mini worlds. So it was very comfortable for me to go back into that world. It was
Yeah.
not a new, but it was like return to an old friend in a way.
Right. I guess because it's all solo violin material and the duo stuff is so spare and so specific. I see what you're saying. There's like a relationship in terms of the violin writing, I'm sure.
No, some literally, uh for example, there's a homage, John Cage,
Yeah.
where this awkward stops and goes, and then there's a movement near the end of Kafka fragments with exactly same mood and atmosphere, and he's asking us to do exactly the same thing,
Oh, cool.
as if almost he practiced that idea of John Cage
First,
and
right.
then used it in Kafka fragments.
Can you talk a little bit about the framing? You know, the album is called Hommage à Kurtág, but also in Kurtág's work, he's often paying homage to different figures, either that he's interacted with in his life or uh, artists who have inspired him.
Right. It seems to be a really important emotional trigger for Kurtag. Many of these are in memoriams, of a few of his friends, some of them long gone, and they all, of course, very poignant. Then, there's a homage to Bach, right? So there's some harmonic games going on. There's homage to John Cage, and some of them are just gifts. For example, there is, children of his friends. So there's a violinist, Andras Keller, So this as a short, lovely piece, very energetic, dedicated to him. And there's a Carenza jig that is dedicated to a little girl called Carenza, the daughter of a friend, which is a fascinating and a fun and just piece, joy to play.
Yeah, there's an amazing sort of expressive contrast range in these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from like extremely somber and intense to more joyful and light. Should we listen to a little bit of the Carenza jig?
Sure.
Here it is. So it'd be great to also talk about the other component to this project, which is your work commissioning four other composers to write homages to Kurtág in the context of this piece of his, which is also contains so many homages to other folks.
Yeah, I was, when that idea came to me, I was very happy uh, about it. And I was, again, very pleased when you were happy about it too, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
thought it
I
was a
loved
good
it.
idea
The great
for a
idea. Yeah,
CD.
yeah,
Yeah, and so I knew I was going to ask Gabriela Frank, who is a dear friend, and she already, I'm lucky recipient of two other major pieces by her. So that was a natural. And then, through a creative process of weeding out, consulting with friends I trust, I ended up on three more composers who some of them are new friends for me. Some of them I knew from before. One of them is my UCLA colleague, Kay Rhee. And then there are two who worked with Gabriela Frank at her creative academy. And Aida Shirazi is one of them, and Jang Won Wei. So we had even fun raffle of sorts because I wanted the pieces to be named sign, game, and message.
yeah,
And I gave Gabriela Melodia because of connection to Bartok, and I knew I will be playing Bartok Melodia, and Gabriela loves Bartok, so that was taken,
yeah,
Melodia. But so we did one of those, when a family chooses a movie, give us first choice, second choice, third choice, and I did it by email. And so we ended up with assigning sign, game, and message
yeah,
to Aida, Kay, and Jang Yoon, respectively.
yeah,
And wonderful, wonderful things happened. It just was so much fun. They loved it. I sent them recording of my signs, games, and messages. They listened. Uh, they already were big fans of Kurtak, so I didn't have to like convert them into admiring
right.
his art, but they each found the rules of the game where just find something that really touched you or was special for you and just do your own version of commenting on it.
Yeah,
um, and that's what happened. So working with them and in perfecting and fine-tuning the pieces was also a great project. And so I'm so happy that they are on this record as
yeah.
a other kind of a homage to his music.
Yeah, it's a wonderful sort of web that you've spun on all the different connections that are happening on this record. And of
Mhm.
course, Gabriela Frank has a piece on your earlier record of solo repertoire inspired
That's
by
right.
Bach.
The Sweet Mestiza. Mhm.
Yeah, which is also really great. Should we
Yeah.
listen to a little bit of one of these? Which one do you
Sure.
think is most wonderful?
Maybe it would be fun to listen to Kay Ria's game because she wanted to pay attention, pay homage to Kurtak's sort of paradoxical, a bit, and some irony, game-like aspect of his music. So, and it
Great.
has a funny title too.
Okay, here it is. K. Ree's game. And now maybe we can talk about the sort of other sort of connection, the other wing of uh, this project, which is sort of looking backwards towards more iconic Hungarian repertoire.
Well, it's Kurtág admires Bela Bartok. He's his idol, and I think his hair, um, literally standing on the shoulders of Bela Bartok. Um, so when I remember the days in 2008, actually in Darmstadt, when I was so fortunate to work with him on Bartok's solo sonata, that was really a very, very unforgettable time, and he knows that music in and out. So I felt that there should be some Bartok on this record, um, and maybe because of that memory of working with Kurtág on Bartok's solo sonata, I felt like the melodia, the very special slow movement from a solo sonata, should be there, um, and and that's why I also asked Gabriela Frank to write her melodia, sort of as a homage not only to Kurtág but to Bartok, who is her hero as well. And the CD actually ends, the physical CD ends with my perhaps favorite of the Science, Games and Messages. It's called In Nomine a Longa Rese by Kurtág. And I have this almost uncanny, I cannot explain it then, but feeling that it's just a spiritual twin of the Melodia from Bartok's solo sonata. It's very different. There's no irony, there's no mystery. It's like a one endless heart. It starts from C sharp and ends from C sharp, and there's 4 minutes of just the heart and soul spinning, through different dimensions. It's perhaps one of the most Hungarian movements of Kurtág. So yeah, mm, it felt just right to finish the whole record with that. That's very special for me piece.
Great. Well, let's listen to a short portion of that movement. And of course, if we could, we'd listen to all of these, but the whole point of these videos is to encourage you to listen to the whole album on your own. So please do. But here's just a bit of In Nomine from Signs, Games, and Messages. And so also, for those of you out in YouTube land, it's good to be aware that the digital version of this release actually has a bonus piece, which is the Kodai, the famous Kodai duo, which you recorded with Rohan Dasaram. Do you want to that? I mean, that sort of also links into this the lineage of Hungarian repertoire, of course, but also I know that for you that collaboration was really meaningful, and you just wanted to make sure to
Well, Rohan
document. Yeah,
one of heroes of mine.
right.
I was very fortunate to meet him by chance here in Los Angeles. And then the moment I heard him, I was like, I have to play with this person. And I was so fortunate that we had several occasions to collaborate in different repertoire, but including a Kodai sonata, which we performed a few times. So this recording actually is a live recording from a concert here in Los Angeles about 12 or so years ago. And of course, the sound is not as perfect as the studio recording, but to me, it's a very important personal document, and I'm very proud of the musical content, so to speak. Really honored to have Rohan there, and I felt like I want this to be out there. This piece, it didn't feel right to put it on the CD because the sound is very different, you know, but. And another interesting fact is when we were in Darmstadt, Rohan also was there, and he was also working with Kurtág. So there's this not just Hungarian connection, but Kurtág little triangle between, you know, Rohan, Kurtág, and myself.
Yeah,
So yeah, and I like having those three Hungarian composers on the
yeah,
one record as
that's
well.
great. Uh, cool. Well, it's such a wonderful project. It's great to have more of your music in the catalog.
Yeah,
And so it comes out on October 21st, which is only a couple days away. FCR 347 Hommage at Kurtág. And just to shout out some people who worked on the production, you and Andrew McIntosh produced the album, recorded and mastered by Sergei Parfenov, except for the Kodai, which Benjamin Moss recorded, and Mark Wolf did the design, and images from Elizabeth and Justus Schlichting.
Schlichting,
Schlichting.
Schlichting. And I wanted to just give us additional special shout out to Jay. His official name is Justice, but he goes by Jay. Jay and Elizabeth, she goes by Helen Schlichting, who are dear friends. They're huge supporters and lovers of new music. By now, I think they are on a commission number 327.
Wow.
And we're talking from LA Phil and Takash Quartet and Stephen Ho to, you know, even those little single violinists such as myself here in Los Angeles. But this couple really did so much to create, you know, for commissioning, especially American composers, that they should be applauded everywhere. But on top of it, we had a fun side project where I asked Jay and Helen to pick their own images. They're master photographers, and they work with the digital photography, and they make some very beautiful images to match the newly written pieces to their own art. And so, you know, the booklet, if the listeners see it, it's all images by Jay and Helen, including the cover. Yeah, and so I was glad that, you know, the listener and audience and whoever will be able to look at the real or a digital booklet will see about 10 images of Jay and Helen.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I know you
Thank
have to get back to teaching, but glad we could squeeze in a little chat. And congrats again on this great project.
thank you, Dan. Great
Please,
chatting with you.
everybody, check out the record. It's in all the places that you would expect. Our website, Bandcamp, all the streaming services, for sale in physical format, and so on and so forth. Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.